eternal still burns within them. But the Gnostic prophecy of the end times isn't one of fear and doom, like the one you've always been taught. According to the hidden texts, the unveiling is not the end of creation. It is the end of deception, the lifting of the veil, a revelation of what you truly are. You've always felt it deep down, the quiet knowing that reality is beginning to crack, that the old stories can no longer stand against the rising tide of consciousness. The Gnostics foresaw this exact moment. They said that when the material dream begins to crumble, the divine spark within humanity would begin to stir, awakening from the long amnesia of matter and illusion. But this remembrance comes with resistance, for as the light rises, the powers of illusion fight harder to keep their dominion intact. These are the archons, hidden forces that early mystics claimed were feeding on ignorance, weaving confusion into the human mind. But even their reign has an expiration date, because according to Gnostic revelation, a new light is returning, what the ancient texts call the illuminator of knowledge, a force that reappears throughout the ages to remind humanity of its divine spark. So the end of the age, they said, is not a fall from grace, but a return to it. In this video, you'll discover what these ancient writings really reveal about humanity's true destiny, and why that revelation not only turns every belief about the apocalypse upside down, but unlocks the hidden reason you're alive right now. They called themselves Gnostics, those who know. Not believers, not followers, but knowers, seekers of a truth that could not be contained by temples or scriptures. Their writings, later buried in the sands of Egypt, or rediscovered in 1945, the Nag Hammadi Library, a collection of scrolls that would rewrite everything we thought we knew about the early spiritual world. Hidden among them was the apocalypse of Adam, a revelation said to come directly from the first man himself. But in this version of the story, Adam was not the sinner cast out of Eden. He was a being of light, who descended from a higher aeon, the Pleroma, the realm of divine fullness. His fall was not moral, it was cosmic. He and Eve were luminous beings who had once walked in glory. But when they entered the material world, their light was dimmed, the Gnostics said, by a lesser creator known as the Demiurge, the blind craftsman who mistook himself for the source. This was the beginning of illusion. In Gnostic belief, the true God, infinite and beyond all form, did not create this world of opposites and decay. They said it was the Demiurge who shaped it and set the powers of illusion to guard it. Humanity's divine spark was imprisoned in flesh, trapped within the cycle of birth and death, the dream mistaken for the real. But the Gnostics also spoke of a promise, a time when remembrance would return. They called this time the final aeon, a period when humanity would reclaim their divine birthright, and the illusion would begin to dissolve. In the apocalypse of Adam, the prophecy unfolds through a series of cosmic events. Floods, visitations, wars between realms, all metaphors for consciousness rising and falling through ages. The flood, they said, was not punishment for sin, but in their view, an attempt by a jealous lesser god to erase those who carried the light of knowledge. A symbolic war on Gnosis itself. But not all were lost. Those who carried the hidden light survived, guided by messengers from the higher aeons. The text even names a mysterious figure, the illuminator of knowledge, who appears again and again throughout time, bringing remembrance to humanity when the darkness grows thickest. And always, the cycle repeats, fall and revelation, concealment and awakening, illusion and liberation. The Gnostics called this the divine spiral, history not as a straight line toward revelation, but as a pattern of remembering and forgetting played out across worlds. The power behind these revelations was precisely why they were buried, because a humanity that remembers its own divinity cannot be ruled, and a world that sees through illusion cannot be controlled. But hidden beneath centuries of fear, empire, and dogma, the prophecy survived, waiting for the moment it would rise again. And as the world grows more chaotic, flooded with confusion and noise, that ancient prophecy is whispering once more. But what does it actually reveal about our destiny? And what did the Gnostics truly mean by the end of the world? The answer to those questions doesn't just pierce the heart of the illusion, it reveals what reality itself has been hiding from you. The Gnostics never saw the apocalypse as destruction. They saw it for what the word truly means. A revelation, the moment truth, long hidden, comes into view. In Greek, apocalypsis means to unveil. And the Gnostics said this unveiling doesn't happen to the planet, but to the mind, when perception itself begins to awaken. This is the heart of the Gnostic prophecy, that the world will end when humanity remembers who it really is. According to the Apocalypse of Adam, this world is not the stage of divine creation. It's a field of testing, a cosmic classroom designed by forces that want you to forget your origin. The Demiurge, that blind architect of matter, crafted this world. Bark of the pleroma still glows. It cannot be destroyed, only buried. That spark is your awareness, the silent witness behind your thoughts. It is what the Gnostics called the imperishable seed, the fragment of eternity that even the lower powers cannot touch. But here's where the prophecy becomes more profound. They said that when enough sparks awaken, when enough humans begin to remember, the entire illusion begins to fade under its own weight. The closing of the illusion is not the end of life. It's the end of forgetting. The flood of Genesis, they said, was not a punishment for sin, but a war against remembrance. The lesser creator, terrified that humanity might reclaim divine knowledge, unleashed the waters to drown it out. But certain souls, carriers of the hidden flame, survived. They became the ancestors of those who would one day awaken again. From their lineage, the texts tell us, emerged 400,000 souls of light scattered through time, hidden among ordinary people, waiting for the signal to remember. The prophecy says that these souls would help dissolve the dominion of the lower powers simply by recognizing their true divine origin. That time, they hinted, would come at the end of the age, known as the last aeon. But awakening doesn't come as a single event. It arrives in waves, through teachers, messengers, and inner revelations. The Apocalypse of Adam speaks of a mysterious figure who appears 3 times throughout cosmic history, the illuminator of knowledge. Not one man, but a recurring embodiment of truth. A light that enters the dream whenever darkness reaches its peak, reminding us that it is always darkest before the dawn. Each time, he comes not to save the world, but to remind it of what it already knows. And here's the revelation few understand. The illuminator is not a single being. It is a current of consciousness moving through time. It is the same light that animated the prophets, the mystics, the rebels of every age. And it also lives in you. When you remember, even for a moment, you become part of that current. You become the prophecy fulfilled. This is why the world fights hardest when you begin to see, because every awakening weakens the illusion. And right now, in this moment of human history, as chaos rises, as old systems give way, as truth feels distorted and unstable, that's what the Gnostics said would precede the great unveiling. The Gnostics said the world would not end. Only the false world built on deception would, when the structures of illusion can no longer sustain themselves. But to truly understand what's unfolding, you must see the deeper mechanism behind it. Because when you realize the end is not destruction, but the light reclaiming its forgotten reflection, everything changes. Every awakening calls forth its shadow. And the moment the light begins to rise, opposing forces awaken as well. These forces, the archons, as the Gnostics called them, weave illusion through human thought. Their creator, the Demiurge, was said to rule not through violence, but through belief, convincing humanity that matter is all that exists, and that salvation must be sought outside the self. But this, too, is part of the test. In the Gnostic vision, these forces are not demons to fear. They are the keepers of the labyrinth. They rule the dream until the dreamer remembers it is dreaming. And that moment of remembrance, when the illusion can no longer deceive you, is the beginning of liberation. The apocalypse of Adam reveals that, as the divine spark awakens within humanity, the lower forces panic. They ask their ruler, "What is the power of these humans who stand in your presence, who were taken from the seed of light? They have overturned the dominion of your hand." In other words, the very act of awakening threatens the entire architecture of illusion. The prophecy describes this as a great cosmic disturbance, a shaking not of the earth, but of consciousness itself. And then, something extraordinary happens. A blinding mist covers the veiled heavens. The eyes of the blind rulers darken. Their eons begin to crumble. Fire, light, and wind sweep across the cosmic structure, not as destruction, but as dissolution. The Gnostics said this fire is not punishment, but purification. It burns away everything unreal, every false identity, every illusion, every lie about who and what you are. And from above the collapsing heavens, luminous clouds of light descend. They carry messengers, radiant beings the text names Abrais, Sablo, and Gamaliel. They are not angels of wrath, but rescuers of remembrance, archetypal forces sent to lift the awakened souls beyond the reach of the lower powers. The text says, "They will be like those angels, for they are not strangers to them, but they work in the imperishable seed." You are never a stranger to the higher realms, you came from them. And when the false world dissolves, those who remember do not perish, they return.